Virtue and Victory welcomes Mark Spencer Cook, a best-selling author, leadership strategist, and the founder of Windfall Partners. With a career spanning global organizations with entrepreneurial efforts, Mark has become a master at helping individuals and organizations get unstuck. His groundbreaking books, Sales Blazers and Great Work, draw from real-world experience and global research to reveal how people and teams create extraordinary results. Whether he's guiding CEOs or distilling insights from global studies, Mark brings a rare mix of strategic clarity and grounded wisdom, such as his method, Bold Encounters, a 5-year plan that raises this quarter's results, which includes 5 pivotal acts of elite CEO success.
Mark, welcome. Thank you for joining Doug and I. There's so much we could discuss regarding your work. I'd like to start by referencing your podcast, Bold Encounters, which I love listening to, by the way. You do such a great job being so relatable, so kind, so energetic. Learned a lot from you just in the short time I've gotten to know you. Let's talk first about the podcast just for a moment. And if you can share with us, what's been one of the boldest encounters in your career?
Well, as you can imagine, I've spent a career interviewing the best leaders I could get a hold of, from Jean Sadat to Liddy Dole to Herb Kelleher. I spent the day with the founder of Southwest, and those people aren't on the podcast yet. Herb won't likely be on the podcast. May he rest in peace. But if you talk about the interviews that are coming up or that I've done that relate to the podcast, I did a phone interview once with Bradford Parkinson. And without telling you who he is, I'll just tell you a short version of his story. He was called by his former mentor. They said, "Hey, we're trying to do this navigation program at the Air Force. You're a rocket scientist. We know you. We'd like you to come apply for it." He went and applied. He didn't get the job the first time, actually, which is nice to hear that about Dr. Brad Parkinson. Just because all of us can relate to that. And his mentor pulled him aside and said, "I can get you a second chance. You better bring a plan. You better be specific. You better have the elements we need. And bring your A game." And he did. And what he said is, if we're going to improve navigation, I've gotten together with a big team of the brightest people I could find that would help me think about this. And we are going to do more than make people safer out in the world for the Air Force. We are going to create something that will allow citizens of every nation to hold in their hand something that guides them to places and people that are important to them. That's our vision. And on the way, listen, we take this very seriously. So a shorter term mission will absolutely be first. And that will be to create a better, more precise, safer navigation that will save lives, increase economic value for the country. And we're going to do that as well. And so he orchestrated 5 teams. They went through their quarterly checks, and he led and they led. And they created GPS. But I think one of the most important things that I got out of that interview that's really affected my life, actually, not just my work, but my life's work and my life, is that the innate version that he told me, just the parts that I can't quote here because he's so eloquent. He said, "Mark, a lot of people don't realize that the most natural thing for a human being to do is to find something as a destination and pursue it. And subconsciously, our mind creates a path because it looks for obstacles and weaves through them or goes straight through them, finds a way over them, and gets to the destination. And it's the most innate thing we do. We wake up in the morning, we pursue our toothbrush. We are always doing that. And all organisms do that, but we have this exceptional ability that's far above even the great apes that are our nearest relatives. way beyond them to go to a theoretic or conceptual future in such detail that we can plan a year or 5 years out. And that's what this path was that he was describing, a 5-year plan that backed down into today. What are we going to do today to achieve something that does not exist, but will in fact be a reality? And that whole thought and the reality of what strategy should be about and the 5 milestones resonated with a lot of research I'd done. That was probably the most impactful interview. It's coming up actually in the next half dozen to dozen interviews that we have scheduled and already recorded. I'm going to play that phone call and at least his part. And we're going to have Brad Parkinson on Bold Encounters.
That's
a
amazing.
phenomenal way to begin. Yeah, that's a heck of a kickoff. Very bold. So this was, I just want to do
I've
a
got
follow-up.
45. I've got 45 episodes that people can go see. But this, to your point, is because I've talked to you about this. It's kind of a relaunch. Like, it's not a relaunch because anything was wrong, but I just was recording interviews. I put a couple of interesting ones up, like the winner, one of the great winners of Shark Tank. I put a quadriplegia VP at Goldman Sachs that leads with just his mind and orchestrates. It's such a great example of leadership, and he's such a great person. One of the co-workers of Mother Teresa. So I've got those episodes that they can go listen to in the past, but I think that one coming up is really a way to, I've got these new followers, almost a couple new thousand new followers. And I think it's a great way to kick that off. As you say, they just head upward and on.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. Excited to hear the episode. And you're saying this is the guy, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch his name.
Brad Parkinson. He's obviously Dr. Brad Parkinson. I just didn't want to give it away.
No, I appreciate
Dr. Brad Parkinson, little known, affects all of our lives every single day.
So he created the GPS. He's essentially, he gets the credit for the work on the GPS that we all rely on literally all day, every day.
Key is that it's a big project. So key is that he was the leader of 5 teams, and he's very insistent, and he'll name the names, and he's very insistent that they all invented it. He can't invent a way to use old missiles to get things into the air just right. He can't invent the light bulbs that don't exist alone. I mean, he's not doing he's orchestrating the whole thing as a leadership.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love this story because it's literally about GPS, but there's lessons that we can take about how to use that methodology to kind of GPS our life for bigger projects, right? And I love that you just mentioned how he orchestrated the team, because I think that's what leadership is about. It's about orchestrating all the pieces to be synergistic. And Mark, when I think about your work, as Adam said, there's so much to discuss, and we love your work. Would it be fair if we summarized it? And I get this is a big duty here to summarize your work as seeking out and synthesizing ways to unleash the full potential of people and organizations.
That's a good audience member, so to speak, version of it for sure. But how I would position it is I create elite CEOs, and I do it with a better plan that's research-based. And it's got 5 pivotal milestones, and they mirror exactly Brad's story. So that's what I do for a living. People are at a crossroads. CEOs are new or promoted or buy it from parents, or the private equity hires them, or the board replaces someone. There's a lot of CEOs that are at a crossroads or in a transition, or some that just want to create a new era of better growth, and they just want to do something big. And so those are ideal people that I can help with what I've learned to create better plans for this quarter and 5 years out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I love frameworks personally, and I know you mentioned Bold Encounters, right? You have that methodology for decisive clarity. I guess a question I have about that in your work with CEOs and leaders and all the studies, have you found common traits amongst like those who are successful, and then maybe common pitfalls that people encounter?
Yeah, when we studied people who are leading projects in large, somewhere $1 billion projects, so much bigger than a CEO of a 300-person firm that I often serve at this point in my career. But what you see when you look at the research that we followed up with about leaders of all sizes and looked at what was common to people that won awards. They had accolades, and not just from their industry for a fundraiser, the dinners we go to that people are just putting someone up on stage that's amazing so that they can earn money. We didn't look at those, but we looked at people that had internal awards or received some accolade for something that was substantial, and millions actually. And we ended up with samples that ultimately were well over 15,000. And the challenge in it, I don't want to bore anyone. We're going to talk very little about research actually, but it's one interesting fact about when you start that is you have to do a survey, which is called a literature review. You have to survey what people have found out before, and you amass all these variables that might be really relevant. We amassed almost 600 variables to see what was the answer to your question. And then we did the math over years several times. It came in waves because you can't measure so many variables in one shot, and you have to investigate multiple ways to people's work. And what we found is if you win an award, there is a very, very likely case where you were focused on ideal client outcomes first and making money second. Now, second place, no one is in love with second place, but it's podium position. It's a very important place. I'm not discounting money, but the people that succeed wildly in the long run focus on the outcomes that the ideal clients were seeking first, and in 7 different ways I won't go through here. But they also recognize the order that comes and causes the money making. And then they also can, cut costs and do things for both the client and themselves to affect money. But that money's got to stay second place in those 2 different, the making and saving money has to be second. Now, there is a third, and I've discovered in multiple ways in my research and in my work that there really is only room for 3 priorities. The word priority means that you have to treat everything else as a stepchild a little bit. And you can't, there's no such thing as 1,000 priorities. If so, it's not a priority. It's just a task. So the third one is something we talk a lot about, every one of us, and it's passion. And, that was puzzling for me because I wanted it to be first place. But as I've thought about it and worked with people over the years, it's pretty clear why it's third. We are here to help other people first. That's why we're alive. Then we've got to make a living, got to worry about the weeds and the thistles. So we've got to worry about second place and make some money for them, for us. And then what happens is if we've aligned how we can help with what we're best at helping with, our capacity, our capability, our talents, our skills, our machine we've set up, our company, our technology, if we pointed and aimed all those at creating an amazing outcome, we are in flow, we are thrilled, we are feeling it, and we feel the passion. And of course, you start making money, and then it just accentuates the whole thing. So I believe in our research, customer first and their outcome, not just customer service. It's not about customer service, just a little bit, but it's about their outcome. Money second, passion third. And those leaders are the ones that win awards. And they're very rare, by the way. People that do all 3 of those and look at all those perspectives are only in teens as a percentage of all leaders. So it's a rare thing, but you're exceptional if you do it.
I love how you laid that out, though, because I think simplicity is important, right? I mentioned frameworks. We're helping our listeners, and I think having a North Star is super, super important. What are you trying to achieve? And by the way, I've had those conversations with business owners where they're like, make money. And it's like, that's a result of things you do, right? That's not the goal, you mentioned customer outcomes. I think that's important. And then the passion kind of comes in the servitude, right? If you're passionate about how you accomplish that, I mean, I can clearly see that. I'd love to kind of hone in on that for our listeners. Now, we talk a lot about discipline and mindset here on the show. If I could, I know you didn't want to spend too much time in research, and I agree. We want to get to know you, Mark. So I
that's fine.
got
Wherever
one
you
more
wanna go.
question,
Wherever
maybe
you
a
wanna
little
go.
bit more personal.
Yeah.
You mentioned in your bio about sports and just competition. How's that shaped you in your life?
Well, I'll have a confession to make. You're putting your website together as a new solopreneur. I didn't even have help then. I didn't have other people working with me, but it's real. Sports has always been really important to me. I had a spine infection about 3 years ago. Actually, it's the anniversary of it this weekend, and you almost lost me. It was very serious. And I can't even jog anymore. But, I do have my eyes set on, I used to do Ironman and things like that, but I can't even jog because of that spine incident. And, but, I got to meet the Olympic walker, and he said he can do a marathon in 3 hours and 20 minutes by walking. So I got a new vision and lease on life. Like maybe there's another one in me, but let me give you something a little more helpful to other people and more profound maybe than that. I think one of the thoughts, it's a really random small thought that has popped into my head a few years ago, and it keeps coming back. And I used to play rugby. And I was on the national champion Highland rugby team, and that was, in the first year of college. And then I went to the college team that got beat by them. But so I loved it the first scrimmage. I was a football person. Football is my real passion as a child and as a teenager, even as early college. I just loved, and I still love watching football and playing if I could before this a few years ago. And and yet the first time I scrimmaged in a real live rugby scenario after a few weeks of learning how and practice, I just couldn't believe how enjoyable it was. And yet over a couple of years, a few years of it being kind of the second sport, it's a club sport. I'm going on to adulthood. I'm worried about career and this volunteer mission I'm about to do for my faith. And it just wasn't that important to me. And so I have to admit that at the end, I got a little lazy, and I'd wake up on Saturday for the game. And I'm like, oh, going getting hit by people with no pads on. I don't know. And I'd go. And I remember one time it was at a field. I could tell you, I can see the spot right now. I can see the moment in my mind. And I just dragged myself. I was a starter, so I dragged myself onto the field, and it was a learning experience. I got hit so hard. I don't know that I've ever been hit that hard, but it really shook me up. Luckily, I wasn't injured. I was capable of getting up, but it woke me up. And suddenly I was on fire, and I chased that guy down. Of course, you can't cheap shot, so I didn't, but I went into the field of play. I kept the game going. That may mean nothing to anyone else but me, but the feelings and the thoughts that switched instantly from not wanting to be there to fully engaged in wanting to be there happened like this, and it came externally. But it also came because I showed up, I got in the game, and I started. And every time I've ever had to start a session of selling or a session of customer service that was not something that was exciting, if you just show up on time and if you just try and start, the starting gets you going, and then you'll hit problems and possibilities and things And we all know momentum is real emotionally in work land too. And so that's a strange one to respond about sports, but that's been the most meaningful. And then of course the team stuff is very meaningful, but that's almost a cliche and people already understand that. So I think I'd pick that.
I think it segues us into a few things, but I do want to ask for those of our listeners who are like rugby, what position were you on the field?
Well, that's embarrassing because I was wing. I was that speedy guy.
I guessed you were a wing based on the scenario. So you're the fast guy. So I played a little bit of rugby. I was the hooker.
Oh, nice.
And so
you're the
that
tough
only
guy,
is
yeah.
No, I was the guy that the scrum pushed up to get the ball. But yeah, you were gonna say, Mark?
I was just gonna say, at risk of breaking your neck, really, is what you were.
No, were you fast? I mean, wingers are typically fast.
Please,
you ran on the guy.
Yes, I was super fast. How's that?
Awesome. Awesome.
I was not the fastest, I'll say. There were two guys faster than me. And
was is the key word there.
Yeah, was. And there were two guys faster than me. Yeah, this is a man who can't even run anymore. But there were two guys faster than me. And that's got some profound things in it too. Like, I loved chasing them and trying to best them. Mm-hmm. It made me so much better. So there's nothing wrong with be second and third, like we talked about originally.
And avoid getting hit makes you better too, right?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't worried about that, but I was worried about the end zone, the touchdown.
Yeah, the touchdown.